What's up everyone, it's Kelly and today I've got another nail polish 101 video for you. So today we are going to be talking all about striping tape. First I'll go over all of the frequently asked questions, and then I'll show you exactly how to use it, and then I'm going to give you some examples of how to use it for different nail art looks. So what exactly is striping tape? Well, this is striping tape. It's actually just a really thin tape that you can use on your nails for different types of nail art. It's actually significantly thinner than regular tape. It's usually about 1 millimeter thick, and it doesn't really act like regular tape in that it's not particularly sticky. I would say it's closer to washi tape in terms of stickiness because you can peel it up and stick it back down. It comes in a variety of different colors and patterns. It's usually a metallic color, but sometimes you get funky little patterns, sometimes it's holographic, so it can be really fun to accessorize with. So next question, what do you use striping tape for? Honestly, there are so many different techniques. I'll show you a bunch at the end, but I would say overall there are 3 main techniques. Technique 1 would be, in my experience, the most common, which is to use it to block off certain parts of your nail and then paint over it and then peel it off when it's done. Technique number 2 is where you actually use it as a part of your manicure and leave it on your nail. And then technique number 3 would be to use it for French manicures, which I guess can be a combination of techniques 1 and 2. Next question, where do you buy it? Well, you can get it in most nail supply stores, but they usually sell them individually, and to be honest, there's not that much in an individual roll of striping tape. I find that it is significantly cheaper to order online. I actually get mine off of Amazon, and you can pretty much buy a lifetime supply for less than $10, and you can also get it in a bunch of different colors and designs. If you are buying it online though, it is very important to check the size because there are different types of striping tape that are meant for different uses. You want to make sure you are buying striping tape specifically for nails, which, like I said, is generally 1 millimeter thick. So those are the questions that I hear most often, but now let's get into the basics of striping tape and how to use it. Let's start with that first technique where you use it to block off different parts of your nail and then peel it off when you're done using it. The most important thing to remember about striping tape is you want to only apply it to your nail when your nail polish is fully dry. Otherwise, when you peel that off at the end of your manicure, you are going to peel off your base color with it. In my experience, the easiest way to make sure that that polish is fully set and dry is to actually use a layer of top coat. So let's say, for example, you want to paint some vertical stripes on your nail. Basically, what you want to do is you take your base color, you apply however many coats it takes to get to full coverage, and then once that is dry to the touch, you apply your top coat, and then you have to wait for it to fully dry. Using striping tape is definitely time consuming. It's not something that you should be breaking out when you are in a hurry because it does take a long time. You need to make sure that your polish is fully set. So once that top coat is fully dry to the touch and it doesn't smudge at all, that's when you can apply your striping tape. So it's super easy to use. Basically, you just peel it off of the roll and then you can use a scissor to cut it and then you apply it onto your nail. And the great thing about striping tape, like I said, it's not too sticky. It's sticky enough that it will stick to your nail, but if you make a mistake and place it in the wrong spot, you can easily peel it up and replace it where you want it to go. Another important tip is to make sure that it is pressed firmly to your nail, because if it's only lightly touching your nail, it's not going to protect that base color from getting paint over it. You want to make sure that it's really pressed in there, which is why it's very important to have a fully dry base color. And then of course, the next step would be to paint over it. And then here's another super important tip. You want to peel off your striping tape while that coat of polish is still wet. So you want it to be fully dry before you apply your striping tape, but then after you apply your striping tape and paint over it, you need to peel it up while it's still wet. And the reason for that is when you're working with nail polish, it tends to stick to itself. So if you have a full coat of nail polish and underneath you have those bits of striping tape, when you start to peel that off, you're going to start to peel off some of that drying nail polish with it. So if you peel it off while the nail polish is still wet, it's not going to be all sticking together and it's going to give you a nice crisp line. Now, because of this, I always recommend that you work one nail at a time when you're using your striping striping tape. So you can apply your striping tape to all of your nails, but then once it comes time to paint, I would paint one nail, peel off all the striping tape, then paint the next nail, peel off all the striping tape, then paint the next nail, peel off all the striping tape, and so on. And then once that second layer of polish that you used with your striping tape is dry, then you can apply your top coat to seal in the manicure. Now, another big tip I have for this technique is if you are painting any sort of design that isn't straight lines up and down your nail, I would personally recommend using a nail art brush to fill in the areas that you want the nail polish on your nail and just work around towards the edges of the striping tape rather than painting the full nail. Even if you are only working with one color, if you're painting over striping tape that's not sitting vertically, because that striping tape isn't as strong of a bond against your nail, it might start to peel up a little bit and then you won't get those crisp lines. So I honestly almost always use a detail brush just because I find it to be easier. I still get to have those crisp lines and I don't need to worry about any sort of freehand skill, but I'm also ensuring that that striping tape is staying down on my nail and it's going to give me that nice line. So like I said, at the end of the video, I will show you a few different examples of different types of methods that you can use, but basically anything other than up and down or diagonal across your nail, I would personally just use a detail brush for. So now let's talk about that second technique of using striping tape, which is to use it as decoration. Now this is fairly easy and straightforward. Basically, you're just applying your striping tape onto your nail, but it is important to remember that this is a 3D element that you're adding to your nail polish. So what that means is that there is a chance of it peeling up if you're not applying it properly. So for example, if you are doing a line of striping tape along the free edge of your nail to sort of mimic a French manicure look, you want to make sure to cut the striping tape at the exact end point of your manicure and where you're going to apply your top coat, because even if it's a little bit too long, there is a chance that it could catch on something and it could start to peel up and ruin your manicure. Now, same as the last technique, you always want to apply your striping tape once your base color is dry, but in the case of using it as a decorative element where you want to keep it on your nail, you do not need to use top coat in between. So you can just paint on a couple of layers of your base color, and then once that's dry, you can apply your striping tape and then you can put your top coat on over that. But the one flaw with that is if you're applying it over nail polish without top coat, you need to be a little bit more precise because it is more likely to peel up your nail polish underneath. So if you are using it as a decorative element, I do recommend applying it before the top coat, but I do recommend using tweezers to make sure that you're putting it in the right spot. You can always use top coat in between. Just for my personal preference, I like to do it without top coat in between if I'm using it as a decorative element. So in the case of using it as a decorative element, this is extremely important. You want to make sure that you are using a thicker top coat. Some top coats are very thin, some of them are thicker and they're considered gel-like because they give you a nice thick layer of top coat. It's very important to use one of those thicker gel-like top coats or to use multiple layers of top coat in order to seal in your striping tape. If you do decide to use a thinner top coat, you are going to feel that striping tape on your manicure. It's not going to feel smooth on your nails, and that might not be a problem for everybody, but a lot of people are tempted to pick at their nails when they feel a little bit of texture, so just something to be aware of. Like I said, I would always recommend using a thicker top coat. All of the top coats that I recommended in my favorite base and top coats video are all what I would consider to be gel-like top coats, so I would recommend any of those. So yeah, that's the basics of how you use striping tape. It is pretty straightforward, but it definitely does take a little bit of practice to get it right. Sometimes, depending on how detailed your striping tape manicure is, it can be hard to peel it off before the polish starts to dry, but it does get easier with practice. So now that you know the basics, let me show you a few different ways that you can use striping tape, because it's not just for striped manicures. There's really a lot of different methods that you can use with striping tape that give you a really cool nail art look. So let's go ahead and roll the nail art footage. So we'll start off with something super easy. I'm going to show you how I do a French manicure using striping tape. Now, I do have videos on how I normally do a French manicure, but this is how I do it if I want to have a base color. So in this case, I have this really beautiful base color. I painted that on and then I went in with my top coat, and then once that was totally dry, I applied my striping tape where I wanted my French manicure to be, and then I went in with my white nail polish and I just carefully painted on underneath that striping tape area area. And then while it's still wet, I'm just going to peel that off, and it leaves me with the perfect French manicure line. So once that's all dry, I'm going in with my top coat again, and that is just the super easy way that I like to do a French manicure if I'm using a color underneath, or if I'm doing a sort of funky French manicure color. Next, I'm going to show you one that actually looks really difficult, but it is super simple. Basically, I'm just applying my striping tape diagonally across my nails, so it creates this almost diamond crosshatch pattern on my nails, and then I'm going in with a gold polish and I'm just painting over that. Now, normally I would use a detail brush to do this, but I really firmly pressed in that striping tape, so I wasn't too concerned with it. And while that gold polish was still wet, I peeled off the striping tape and I was left with this really gorgeous design. I honestly love this color combo. It's giving designer bag kind of vibes, but I think it's really cool. And then of course, once that dried, I just went in with my top coat again. So again, super easy. It would also be really cool to put little rhinestones or maybe glitters in the little X part of the design, just to kind of add a little 3D element to it. Now, this is my trick for doing a checkered design on my nails. You could theoretically just do this with Scotch tape and tape off the portions of your nails that you don't want to be covered with the second color, but I prefer doing it this way just because I feel like Scotch tape is a little bit more hit or miss, where sometimes it does peel up my base color even if I do have top coat on, just because it's a little bit more sticky. So what I do is I just kind of create this X pattern, but I leave a little area in the center where the two boxes can connect, and I actually just painted closer to the striping tape and then peeled it off before I filled in the checkered area. That's just because you want to work fast so that the polish doesn't have time to dry on the striping tape, and then when you peel it up, it kind of looks a little sloppy. So once that is peeled off, I just went back in and filled in those areas, and then I finished that off with top coat. And looking at it now, I can see that my proportions were a little bit off. The bottom squares are a little bit bigger than the top squares, but I still think it looks really cute. I actually love this color combo. Now let's move on to a design that is my go-to design for when I'm trying to impress somebody with some like fairly neutral but also kind of detailed nails. I'm doing a diagonal line with striping tape across my nail, and then under that I'm just putting vertical striping tape lines, and then I went in and filled in that area with a different color, and then while that was still wet, I started peeling up my vertical tape first. You always want to work backwards, so you always want to peel off the tape you applied last, just to make it a little bit easier and so there isn't any pieces that get caught when you're trying to peel it up. But it basically feels kind of like a play on a French manicure, like a funky diagonal French manicure, and it looks really cool. I feel like it works with any color combo, but I especially love it with a neutral base color and then a really vibrant or even neon accent color. So it looks really awesome. You could also do this with multiple colors like red, yellow, green, and have it almost look like sound system nails. That would be a very cool variation of this. Now I'm going to show you a little bit more of an intermediate technique. This is what I like to call stained glass nails. So basically I am just randomly applying my striping tape in a bunch of different places on my nail just to create a bunch of little triangles, squares, whatever kind of shapes. And then I'm going in with a small nail art brush and I am just filling in those random shapes with multiple colors. I ended up doing 4 colors for this, but you can really do as many colors as you want. The difficult thing about this one is you need to work really fast because you want to peel up the striping tape as soon as possible. But of course, if you're going in with multiple colors and you're painting in these tiny areas at a time, then it might be a little bit tricky. So definitely not a beginner friendly way of doing your manicure. But if you do have any extra little pieces like I just did there that get fully covered by nail polish, you can peel them off a little bit early, but for the rest of these, they're all kind of connected to different parts of my nails, so I had to go in and paint basically all of the shapes in order to be able to peel off the design. But if you're ever in a situation where you do need to wait a little bit longer to peel off the striping tape and you find that it ends up looking a little bit sloppy, you can always go in with a really tiny brush and some acetone and just kind of wipe off any areas that got a little sloppy. And because you have your top coat in between the layer of base color and the paint that you're painting on your nail, it shouldn't peel up or remove the color underneath. It should just remove the top coat and whatever mistake was made on there. So luckily I managed to work pretty quickly here, and I did get to peel off everything in time without it getting sort of sticky and messing up the straight lines. But again, pretty easy to fix. And then once everything is dry, you can go in with your top coat. And of course, with a manicure like this, you also need to wait a really long time for the nail art to dry before you go in with your top coat, because it would really be terrible if you smudged this after going through all the effort of creating this sort of stained glass nail look. And last but not least, here's a really easy way to incorporate striping tape onto your nail and then keep it onto your nail. So clearly I'm in a very diagonal mood lately, so I went in with a diagonal line onto my base color, and I'm not worried about making it perfect because I am going to be covering that line with striping tape. Of course, I made a mess on my skin, so I had to wipe that off, but I'm just going in with my striping tape and I'm covering that line that I made, and then I'm actually using little cuticle nippers just to make sure that I get a really precise cut as soon as my nail ends. And then I'm just topping everything off with top coat, and it honestly looks so smooth with that striping tape there. It almost makes it look like it's a very straight line, even though I don't think I necessarily painted on a straight line, but it kind of straightens everything out for you, and it just creates a nice little extra detail. And really the options are endless with using striping tape as decoration. So yeah, there's a bunch of different techniques that you can use with striping tape, but overall it is super fun to play with. Once you get the hang of it, you're going to want to use it all the time, as long as you give yourself enough time to work with it. But I really do think that it is worth the amount of effort that you put into a striping tape manicure, because it always looks so crisp and beautiful. As always, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. I'm happy to answer them. I will link a couple of options for different striping tapes that you can buy online in the description, so check that out if you're interested. And if you want to see more striping tape nail art, maybe in a compilation, let me know in the comments, because I would love to do that. If you enjoy the Nail Polish 101 videos, please give this one a thumbs up. It really helps me out. And if you have any requests for a specific Nail Polish 101 video, leave it in the comments. If you're not already subscribed to my channel, please consider subscribing. I put out new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And of course, a huge shout out to my supporters on Patreon, my Royal Astronomer Amanda M, as well as my Cosmic Admirals Paula, Ken, Rosie, and Angel. I really appreciate your support, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye. Today's fun fact question comes from Patreon supporter Sabrina, and Sabrina wants to know, if you had a child tomorrow, what would you name them? I'm laughing because I have a good story for you. I don't want any children. I'm not going to have any children. However, love when people in my life are pregnant, because I have a list of terrible names that I love to innocently suggest to people. And that's not to say that any name can be terrible. It's just because they are nicknames for not names. Let me give you an example. If a friend or family member of mine is pregnant with a baby girl, then I would say, oh, you should name her Mel. But instead of it being short for Melanie, it can be short for watermelon. So her legal name is Watermelon, which I think is great. There's also May, which is obviously short for mayonnaise. You could always go with Polly, which is, you know, a nickname for polish. I actually suggested so many bad names to a family member of mine that she actually called me and she was like, please stop giving me names because you're ruining every girl's name. So yeah, if anybody has any good funny names like that, let me know. I'll add them to my list. But yeah, that's it. I'll see you all in my next video. Bye.